Welcome to the 64th episode of the GameFor Podcast. In this episode, we'll talk about how the pandemic has affected tabletop gaming. I'm Adam.
I'm Matt.
And this is the GameFor Podcast. GameFor is a platform to help connect tabletop gamers and to help you get more out of your tabletop gaming. Matt and I are part of a software development and design company called Milk Can, and because most of the folks at Milk Can love tabletop games, we've developed the GameFor app and launched it in early 2018. We launched the companion podcast in June of 2019 to help tabletop gamers get more enjoyment out of their hobby. Due to the COVID-19 global pandemic, which we'll be talking about today, we hibernated the GameFor app in July of 2020 and plan to bring back a retooled version of the app for Android, iOS, and web when gaming in person is safer. Until then, we'll keep bringing you this podcast to help you get more out of your tabletop gaming. So, you recently did some gaming that was not tabletop. I mean, it's kind of like a table.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a type of table. But yes, I was a pinball wizard.
I thought you were going to say ping pong for a second.
No.
Like table tennis.
But yeah, Pinball Expo, which moved to its new home at the Renaissance Hotel in Schaumburg, Illinois.
Which is the same place where Adepticon is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if I always was like, well, miniatures is a small part of the tabletop hobby. But it takes up quite a bit of that Renaissance. Like
because you were there and there was, you said what, like something to 1,000 to 2,000 people at this thing?
And so this was quite a bit smaller. Like,
right.
Everybody was kind of shocked that they're like, wow, look at all the space and how much. And I'm like, yeah, but you're not using most of the space.
Right. I've been here when all of the space has been used.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a bit smaller, but yeah, it was pretty fun. I was there for 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
They had tournaments going on, a bunch of sessions. Some new games were revealed and got to play on them. Some homegrown games, which is kind of like games that people have built themselves, designed and built themselves.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Like pinball machines.
Pinball machines, yeah.
Do they take like some other pinball machine and then like replace all the insides, or do they build it completely from scratch?
Some do that. Most,
wow.
Yeah. Some have taken old play fields and then like repurposed it and did some designs, and some started with brand new pieces of plywood and built everything. A lot of 3D printing and stuff is being used, which is pretty cool to see. Yeah, it's awesome. I actually went to a homegrown seminar that kind of talked about how to get into it. It was my favorite part of it was how to get into building your own pinball machines and 4,761 easy steps.
Yeah, no, that sounds about right.
Yeah,
I understand it. Yeah. My first year of college, I worked at an arcade, and luckily it was not my job to clean the pinball machines because I had no idea how to, but it looked very involved. There was a lot of little rubber bumpers and all kinds of things.
Yeah,
and little switches and relays and.
Yeah, I got my own machine. I've been playing in a league for a while, which is crazy. These people have tens. You have to have at least 50 machines to host, and we've got 8 or 9 of the people can host.
You got 8 or 9 different people who have at least 10 to 15 machines.
Yeah, one guy, he had so many that his wife finally let him get like a commercial spot, and so now he's kind of opening it up to he does weekly tournaments now. And I think when he moved over there, he had 60 that were ready to play.
Wow.
And now he's last count was 110.
Jeez.
Plus he says he has another 40 at home that are in various states but not ready for play. It is a lot.
Miniatures are a lot smaller.
They are.
And even cheaper. People talk all the time about how miniatures are expensive, but pinball is a bit more, isn't it?
Right. And it was funny too. They were one of the owners was talking. People were like, these prices are outrageous. He's like, yeah, but you're just getting more people into the hobby right now, but we've got people that are coming from the car collecting hobby, and they're like,
oh yeah,
these things are so inexpensive.
Yeah, in comparison,
I spent $500,000 on a car last year. I can buy 50 pinball machines.
Mm-hmm.
So
fancy ones too.
Yeah. But yeah, we did that. So just got back from that.
Mm-hmm. And what other kind of hobby stuff you've been doing?
Still painting my orcs a little bit. I think I maybe got an hour in. I just kids sports. I'm now coaching basketball, so that's been keeping me busy.
Yeah.
But then one of our listeners recommended a new RPG. It's available for solo play called 1,000-Year-Old Vampire. So I checked it out and immediately bought it.
Nice.
Because I need more. But no, it's really cool. You play as a vampire. And there's ways to kind of make choices and stuff as you go through the story and everything to kind of build yourself out. So yeah, I ordered the physical book. It comes with the PDF, so I read through the PDF rules and everything of how to get started, and then the physical book should be here anytime now. So
nice.
I plan on playing when I get the physical book.
Yeah.
Just because the artwork and everything was so cool, it just seemed like it really get me kind of in the zone for that. So
I like, I'm generally super happy with. Generally I'm fine with PDF only. You know what I mean? But that being said, when there is a print version, sometimes I do like if I like the game about if I get the PDF and I'm kind of like meh. Then I'm not super jazzed to try to buy the print version. But when I, if there's an option where I could get both and it looks pretty cool or whatever, I'll sometimes like to pull that trigger. But there is something to be said about being able to get to access the book right away, and then be able to get the other, the rest of it later or whatever. So there's that too. But yeah, no, that's cool. That's cool. Is it only solo play?
I thought it said you could do it with multiple players, but I don't think it's really designed for that. Like the rules, you could definitely follow it through. I think it'd be tough to do. I think it was, but it's kind of done in a way that if you wanted to run your own dungeon, you could probably or run your own campaign. It would lend itself to it a little bit. But yeah, it's definitely geared towards the solo play, I think.
Yeah, well, that's cool. Well, I've been, let's see, my list is honestly not a ton different from last time. I've been still working on Car Wars cars. That being said, this is a new set of 6. I finished the first set of 6. I've even varnished them, although I kind of want to go back and give them a second coat of varnish, like matte varnish. But otherwise, I have got like I said, the second set are in progress. I primed them all black. And then I have been using some of the new paints from Army Painter. They have their new airbrush line.
Oh, yeah.
And the thing that's neat about them is they come in these color triads. Okay. So you have a base color, a mid color, and a high color.
Oh, nice.
And so they all match, right? So and it even says on the back of the bottle, this is the mid of these two others. So you don't have to try to figure it out, but you can just go, oh, yeah.
That's so nice. Because I've done that in the store, have picked out and oh, this is the color I want for this, and then 3 months from then when you're actually painting with it, you're like, oh shoot, which color would
right. Yeah. So these come in you can buy them singularly, I believe. I have got the set, but they, when I opened up the box, they were all mixed together, and I'm like, oh man. But then I looked in the back of the
brown paint.
Yeah, well, no, I mean nothing like that. But I mean they were all over the place. So I started looking at the back of the bottle and it was just oh, okay, well this is the mid one for you got rustic bone, bleached bone, and something else bone or whatever. And at first I thought, oh, well, the word bone is the same on, so now I'll know. But there was also multiple different types of reds, and then I was like, now how am I going to know? And that's when I noticed on the back of the label.
Nice.
So the benefit was there that you can spray. So again, like I said, I prime these models black, and then I would hit them with either a base color or a mid color. And then I would hit them either with, if I hit them with the base color, I would usually hit them then and kind of try to highlight with that mid color. Or if I hit them with the mid color first, I didn't use all 3 on any single car. I only used 2 of the 3 triad colors.
Okay.
Instead of, because when you have a triad, the idea is that you can go from the base color and to the mid color and then the extreme highlight.
Right.
I was like, well, these are Car Wars cars. They're not good sculpts. You're going to push them around on the table and stuff like that. So even the ability to just do regular airbrush on them would be fine, but having airbrush where I can also throw a little bit of highlight on them in certain spots, that's kind of nice. So, those are in progress. Like I said, second set of cars.
How was the flow? Did you have to do any thinner or anything?
No, not at all. It's perfect.
Right out.
Yeah,
nice.
Just straight out of the bottle. It was
dropper bottles,
fun.
I assume?
Yep.
There's
that would
something
be terrible if they didn't put them in dropper bottles.
There's something to be said about a paint exclusive company and with where you can tell like the people that are in charge are painters versus paint's coming from a company that it's kind of like a side.
Sure.
Everything's kind of done when you're like, oh yes, thank you did it right. Thank you for doing it right.
I've been real happy with the stuff that they've been doing, and now they've got the speed paints coming up, which are kind of like their version, Army Painter's version of like contrast paints.
Nice.
And they've sent me 3 colors to mess with.
Because contrast has been out almost 2 years.
No.
Because weren't they
No, it's 2 years. They came out. Remember, you brought them to TMX 2019 because they got delivered here, and you brought them there, and that was 2019. So it was June of 2019 when they came out. So it's been over 2 years.
Yeah, and they have released how many new colors?
For contrast, I don't know if they've released any.
They have not.
No? Okay.
So which is like, come on, like.
Yeah, no, you would think that they would release some. That's true, because they've released other new stuff. They released not a ton, but they've released some technical paints and things like that.
Because I was figuring they would. Okay, these are the initial, and they're going to launch more, or even like improved ones of some of the ones that aren't great.
No, I can see that. We were talking just recently, like I think it was on Twitch when I was streaming, maybe even last night. People talking about like either mixing or watering down, not with actual water. Regular water doesn't work well with that stuff, but using the contrast medium that they sell.
Right.
You can do that, I guess. So, yeah, I haven't messed with that much, but it's not a bad idea. Trying to kind of maybe mix to get colors you're looking for. Because sometimes you're like, neither of these colors is quite right. And then I never think to blend. I'm not much.
No, it'd be nice to have more colors to choose from for that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm hoping to do soon. I've got a couple of models I think that I'm probably never going to actually use. There's some Space Marine Scouts or something like that are all mostly in the same pose kind of. So I might prime a bunch of them the same and then compare and contrast. No pun intended. Compare and contrast the difference between like the blue contrast paint and then the blue paint that they sent me, so that they're as close as possible, so you can kind of see. And then maybe make a video about that or something. Been working on those. As far as Warcry, I'm still working on Chaos Heroes for Twitch, or on Twitch. I've been working on a Chaos Warband for Warcry, and the 5 main guys are soldiers, what normal ground troops are done, and then I have a leader that last night on Twitch I finished pretty much. I mean, he's still got to do his base, but otherwise he's done. And then there's one more big kind of leader guy who's on like a big lizard. He's riding a big lizard, and I have to work on him next. So that's going that way. And then this weekend, I'm going to Holy Havoc, which is a Age of Sigmar team tournament in northern Illinois.
Nice.
And I'm going to that. I was originally going to play in it. Sam and I were, but then Sam is moving to... he's moving away from the cornfield he's been living in for the last year and a half.
Coming back to civilization.
He's coming back to civilization. He's coming back to my civilization, which is nice. He's moving to my town, and but that's the weekend he has to move, so we couldn't do it. But I'm still going anyway to hang out.
At least you didn't have to help him move.
His brother's helping him move because his brother's got a truck, so that was the only time he could do it. So
that is one of the reasons I don't own a truck.
Right, no, exactly. Yeah, people ask you to move or help you move. It's a good point. But yeah, so Holy Havoc I'm looking forward to. I know I think last episode of this, I was just about to head to Dragonfall.
Yes.
And that was a lot of fun. I had a great time at Dragonfall. That was in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, home of Dungeons & Dragons. But it was a miniatures convention. It's all done for charity, and we had a great time. Nice. I really enjoyed it. So they're going to be at that facility in... Lake Geneva for, I think they signed a contract for the next 3 or 4 years, so they'll be there for a while. Yeah, it's a really nice, it's a very nice facility. It really is. I've been very happy with it. So
I will have to check that out.
Yeah, definitely. Let me see. What else have we got going on? We got some app updates, right?
Yeah, so version 1.1 of the app. So first minor release
the library manager.
Of the library manager is going to be coming out probably within the next week. Everything's done with it for what we wanted to get done. Bunch of new features, a few bug fixes,
doing some testing and stuff like that.
So it's pretty much wrapped. I just need to get everything built and pushed out. So yeah, we should be seeing that pretty soon.
Yeah.
Our social feeds, I'm sure, will have information about that.
Indeed.
And then for GameFor proper, as I like to call it, for the we'll be releasing the first phase of the 2.0. So rather than waiting, a year and a half of development to get everything working again, we are going to slowly reintroduce features. So the first one we're reintroducing is the one that I think everyone's missed the most and is kind of pandemic independent.
A little bit, yeah.
Is our Store Finder app.
Yeah. So that'll be basically what we're doing is we're trying to make the new version of GameFor to seem a little bit more modular from the front. When you would first load up the old version of GameFor, it would immediately show you here's the games near you or the events near you, and then you could click the little tab thing and see the people who are posting, looking for players near you. And then when you want to go see Store Finder or a Convention Finder or any other features, you had to go into the menu. We want to lead with a menu now. So that people can choose right from the get, okay, well, this is what I want to see today. And the thing is, the upside of doing that is will allow us to kind of trickle out, well, that's not a great word, but it will allow us to release parts of the app at a time as opposed to well, if the event finder is not working, we can't release the app because that's where you start. You see what I'm saying? That way, yeah. So that's very cool. And so we're making some tweaks to the Store Finder, but it is probably the lowest hanging fruit at this point.
Yeah, we're going to be adding some new stuff so that, some features and stuff that we wanted to do the first time, but the design didn't really help it. Adding some extra features so you can know if, we can identify the curbside.
Do they do curbside pickup? Do they have food in store? Do they have actual gaming tables in store? Stuff like that, So that's going to be the first release.
And a better system for reporting updates or closed or new stores.
Yeah, if this store is in our database but it's been closed, or the store has never been entered in our database because it's new, it's going to be easier for you to be able. Because before you basically kind of had to click an email form and all. that kind of stuff.
and then poor Matt had to go and re-enter it all into the admin site.
So we're going to fix the admin portion of there. We're going to make it also easier for people to report stuff and things like that. And so that'll be coming soon. But that's in progress currently. So.
Right. We are starting to take pre-orders for ads. We haven't given the final decision on what the kind of early bird special is and stuff. But if you are interested in advertising, either we'll have geolocated ads right from the start. So that's I want to advertise within 50 miles of here, my gaming convention is coming up, or my store.
Sure, for a gaming convention or store, that's the exact perfect
or tournament or anything like that. We've got that, or if you're I need to advertise my Kickstarter or new game, we'll have that ability as well. So,
and maybe you don't want to ship it too far, or maybe you're well, it's English only, so I'm only going to hit US and UK, stuff like that. But that's going to be coming.
So soon too. Go ahead and contact us, and we can start getting you some early prices and get you booked in on that.
Yeah, you can. We got an email at the end of the podcast. But spoiler alert, it's podcast@IamGameFor.com. So you could just send us a message there. And, there's that. Cool. So we mentioned the pandemic earlier. Maybe you've heard of it.
It's a game.
No, well, it is a game. It's true. But it's also
there's some poor person that has been completely out of it and coming and well, why is the pandemic board game so bad for everybody?
This game has really gotten popular. They talk about it on the news all the time. So, like we said, obviously this is a thing that we've all been dealing with for quite some time. But we thought today it might not be a bad idea to talk about kind of how it's affecting tabletop gaming. And there's some obvious ways, and then I think, honestly, some less obvious ways.
Yeah, and some ways that were that are just now starting to show up that we didn't think about.
Right, but will probably affect things for quite some time.
Yeah.
So obviously, one of the biggest problems, one of the biggest sort of issues when the pandemic first kind of dropped on us, and well, at least here in the United States, which was basically March of 2020, is in-person play. All of a sudden, we were in lockdown. You weren't supposed to go do this. You weren't supposed to go do that. A lot of places, just closed to inside business. They could maybe do curbside, all kinds of stuff like that.
Yeah, don't go out of your house.
Exactly.
Yeah, it was.
But if you were used to going to the game shop and playing, games, I don't know, Friday Night Magic, you were interested in playing, you would maybe. Sometimes game stores have a little room in the back that you can rent if you want to play your D&D and you don't want to have people over at anyone else's house and all that kind of stuff. That all dried up. just full stop. Like that kind of like, game stores were just all of a sudden like, yeah, we can't have events here anymore.
Right.
Which as we've mentioned, that had something to do with us having that had a lot to do, honestly, with us having to hibernate the app back in 2020.
Yeah, we decided that we still wanted to pay employees and
sure.
And people were not able to really use the app.
Right, exactly. Like the app, we're doing we do other work here. That this GameFor is a side project, but there was no point to having the costs and the things like
that.
Right,
because there was there was zero advertising dollars come in because everybody was like, I don't know when. Even ones that weren't directly affected were also starting to do we're secondarily effective. Like if people can't buy our stuff at game stores, where are they buying it, and how is this going to affect my total sales? Like maybe I won't be able to sell as much stuff, so I need to stop spending money on advertising until I figure out where my next meal's coming from.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There was a lot of wait and see, obviously. Yep. But beyond all that, like I said, the in-person play, gaming groups pretty much stopped. If you were part of a gaming club, like that. Those are pretty popular over in Europe and stuff like that, and in the UK. Maybe a little bit less so here in the United States, but that kind of stuff that all kind of ended. That stopped. Conventions, small local conventions, and big conventions. Like you and I were sitting at the steak place that we were eating at in Reno, Nevada during the latter days of the Reno trade show, the Gamma Expo, as they call it, Game Manufacturers Association. Yep. And on the TV, we saw that the NHL
and the NBA
and maybe the NFL all got canceled while we were eating dinner.
NFL wasn't at the time.
Okay.
So yeah, it was just
it did. But all of these big things started happening.
Yep.
Big multi-billion-dollar industries. And then I also got an email or something that was like Adepticon was canceled. And we were just like, oh man, because it
was one of those things like everyone kind of saw coming, but everyone was kind of like fingers crossed, like, well, maybe something like miraculous will happen. That they're like, well, we just found out that Americans aren't actually affected by this if you drink 3 cups of water a day.
Yeah, exactly. Something in the water, but that didn't turn out to be the case. So. So then conventions, like I said, dried up. There was no Adepticon. There was no Gen Con in 2020, sorry. There was, all the stuff. No Essen, no Salute, all these different things. And so that also had a relatively major effect on people who obviously love to go to those conventions. Also, it had a huge effect on people who like running that kind of stuff. I know there's a local convention around here that is sort of like, okay, we're planning on trying to do 2021, but we need people to come and volunteer, and if they don't, we can't do it, and like that kind of stuff. I know that Gen Con tried to go as virtual as possible, and I don't know how many people here maybe are listening actually participated in any virtual conventions. I did actually a decent amount of online painting for virtual conventions, working with the folks.
Yeah, it was the first time you really started doing that, right?
Yeah, that was
kind of like what kicked you.
That's kind of what got me into Twitch. Actually, was I started working with the folks from Board Game Geek, and so they were like, okay, well, we're doing our own convention in conjunction with Dice Tower, and so they had different presenters going on at different times and all that kind of stuff from the website. And so I did like a 3-hour stint, I think, on like a Saturday and a Sunday, where I painted some board game minis and stuff like that and talked to people and explained what I was doing and how I was doing it and all that jazz. And that was cool. And then, I did, I think, also San Diego Comic-Con and Gen Con and a couple other places. And so that was fun. But I'm, doing it from home in the basement, and that was cool. But, but little conventions don't have that kind of capital or resources to be able to pull that off, and so I think they're going to be probably more affected. Now, I know, at least in my local area, there was the small local convention in town happened this fall. Everyone was wearing masks and all that kind of stuff, and I was just at Dragonfall in Lake Geneva a couple weeks ago, and everybody, you had to have proof of vaccination and all that kind of stuff. So I think we're going to see more of that as the conventions start to come back. Yeah, the convention's going to come back, but it's going to have... Gen Con was all masked up, you know what I mean?
Right, yeah, it's Yeah, I mean, Pinball Expo, I was had to wear a mask for the whole time, which was it's been a while since I've worn a mask all day.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of where it is right now until something happens. There's gonna be, there's going to be either it's going to go away or I don't know.
Right. Yeah. No. There's all kinds of things going back and forth with that. What did I think probably occur, however, that for some people, I think, if they had it available, it was definitely a positive, is the ability to play more with their families.
Yeah.
Yeah,
there was definitely more games that my weekly or bi-weekly board game group would normally play. I had none, so I started, bringing the family back to the table.
Now, like if you're used to playing, Age of Sigmar at a competitive level, and you're going to be starting to play with the family, you either have to convince your wife or your spouse or whatever to become a very competitive Age of Sigmar player, or perhaps one of the kids. Maybe your kid's 4.
Crush them.
Yeah, exactly. Kid's 4 years old, and you're like, no. You got to stay in cohesion. You don't put that in your mouth. Just don't. And and that becomes tough. So the board games or the tabletop games in general that you may have been used to playing have changed partially because of the family dynamic. So there's that. So it's definitely, and you folks in who are listening will know this to some degree. I think that it's definitely changed the way that the tabletop industry worked. As far as video games, there's not a huge difference. You're either playing a single player game, which is basically the same as it was before, except that you're doing it, in your whatever, you're playing in your game room or you're in front of your computer or whatever, your laptop, or you're playing on multiplayer. And I think that you probably saw an increase in multiplayer games to a lot of folks because that was their outlet for playing
social,
anything.
yes.
Yeah, and social as well. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I know that my son, he never, his friends, the youngest son, didn't play online, really at all. And then we were kind of encouraging, all the parents were like, hey, we have an Xbox, and so-and-so has an Xbox, so we were, giving each other's kids their names so they
codes
could,
and stuff like that.
So they could find each other and stuff,
Yeah, no. I know I was playing a good deal more video games just because it was an excuse to, sit and talk to people that I knew, again, through, Discord and things like that. As far as online play, not just video games, but also tabletop stuff, you saw, I would say, probably an explosion to some degree of I'm playing a tabletop game, but I'm doing it virtually. Tabletopia, Tabletop Simulator.
Yeah.
The other ones, I know that there's some other ones as well, but Tabletopia and Tabletop Simulator are the only ones that I'm really familiar with.
Yeah, but those things, they were, some of that stuff was around, but nobody seemed to be paying a lot of attention to it, or still seemed kind of niche, and people are like, well, why would I do that when I can just game with my friends in person?
Well, here's the answer, isn't it? You know what I mean? Global friggin' pandemic, So, I mean, I am not a fan of Tabletop Simulator. This may be a hot take. And I'm not. It's not that I'm against the concept. It's not that I'm like, oh no, I really hate the concept of playing a tabletop game virtually. That's not the case. It's just that I find it hard to use sometimes. As a person whose job is kind of user experience, I am flummoxed very frequently by why did they pick to do it this way, and that kind of stuff. So it's not my favorite, but I know that probably a lot of people bought it. I'm sure they were selling, because it was $20 or whatever. And I'm sure that they sold a lot in the first, especially the middle of 2020. But yeah, like I said, there's also plenty of people, and you were doing this too, playing a lot of RPGs over Discord and stuff like that.
Discord. Yeah, I was. Roll20, I ended up with a pro account. I probably should pause that since I'm not doing it right now. But
sure.
Same time. But, it was the stuff I was not really into that I got really good at finding stuff. And, I remember, you used to show me, the virtual dice roller, stuff like that. I'm like, why would anybody want that?
Why would you ever want a virtual dice roller?
And now it's thank goodness they have that.
Yeah. No, I agree.
We did that. We were doing cameras on Google Meet, and which now they've locked it down, so you can't do that because.
Yeah, for the longest time, Google Meet just allowed you to have as many people in a meeting as you wanted to. And so therefore, you could have a webcam pointed at your face so you and your friends could see each other while you're talking, but you could also have just like your phone pointed down
at the dice tray,
at your dice tray, so that you could be playing games that way and people could be seeing your dice rolls and stuff like that. Now Google has decided that if 2 people are having a meeting, it's free. But if 3 accounts are on there, you get it for an hour and then you're supposed to start paying. And, I get it. That's
4, you have to, deposit a quarter into your phone.
I don't know if I have a slot for that on my phone. So, I'm screwed.
Time
All right.
to upgrade.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So, but there's other options, obviously, Discord and all kinds of different things to some degree, but whatever.
Right.
There's a lot of things that kind of got kludged together, like kind of last minute. I mean, honestly, that thing of you guys using multiple like webcams and multiple phones and stuff like that was just like to make it easier. Yeah, exactly.
The necessity is the
mother of invention. Yeah, indeed. So yeah, and the thing is that it's also one of those situations where you're like, as a company, like we went through this, we were like, do we as GameFor want to add a bunch of new features to GameFor that make it easier for you to find players to play online with and all that kind of stuff? And then at the time, silly us, we were kind of like, well, by the time we get it all developed and ready to go, the pandemic will be over, and then it won't be worth it, Yep. Well, that was not true, technically. But on the other hand, also very frequently, at least we've found, you don't generally just decide, I want to play an RPG with people I don't know who are random on the internet. You generally use the internet to make it so you can play an RPG with people you already know.
Yeah.
Or friends of friends, at least, right?
Usually. I mean, there's definitely, I know I've got a friend that will hop onto, there's an RPG Discord channel, and someone will talk about a game, and suddenly they'll all jump in the room. They'll just jump on.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably, not the standard, but yeah, it does happen, certainly.
Right. Get off my lawn.
Exactly.
Sorry.
Yeah. Again, I think that a lot of that stuff, I know with Tabletop Simulator, technically you can just, there's like a little chat room built into it where you'd be like, hey, I want to play this game, and then they'll be like, sure, and then they'll just jump in and whatever. But more often than not, I bet it's probably like, hey, you and I, we've known each other for a while through whatever outlet. Let's play some Tabletop Simulator of Game X, Game Y, whatever.
Yep.
Or let's just throw dice at each other and talk. That's fun too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's been interesting that way, obviously, in trying to figure out, like, because people have been talking about these kind of like, these online things, Roll20, like you mentioned, and a lot of the others, were originally designed for like, well, we were all D&D players, let's say, in high school or college, and now we all live far away from each other. And so we still want to play. And so there's that. And I think nobody, obviously, at least nobody in the industry really thought this type of thing was going to occur. And then, now here we are. So now that's going to be, I think, a back burner idea or a back burner, like, notion.
It's one of those things that people are just going to be like, well, how do you do it with this? And like,
yeah, exactly. Well, what would happen if, like, nobody could go to see anybody else in person for, like, several months in the entire world? And then you would look at that person in a meeting and go, what? That's not even a thing. Why would we even sit down and, like, we used to call that around here edge casey.
Right.
Like,
Yeah,
it's an edge case where you're like, well, technically, I guess that's possible, but it's such an edge case.
A volcano could come down and kill us all.
Sure,
it's not
right.
happening.
How's the app going to work then when you get killed by a volcano? Like, that kind of stuff.
Right.
But now, of course, the edge case happened, and we're like, oh, well, we better keep that in mind as well.
Back pocket, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, I'll be perfectly honest with you. One of the big things, like the next game that Vince and I are working on, like, we're putting in solo and co-op right from the get because we launched Rain in Hell and didn't have solo and co-op, and a bunch of people were like, but I want to play it solo, and we were like, so we had to make an expansion.
Well, and so that's some of those things that is now kind of, I think, long lasting that people got, because they were kind of forced to, got introduced to doing things that are like, oh, actually, I don't mind doing this. And
absolutely, like solo wargaming. There's a lot of people who had scoffed at it in the past, and they were just like, why would I sit here by myself and play a war game? Like, that is ridiculous.
Right.
And then they try it because they had nothing else better to do for a while, and they're like, oh, this is actually kind of interesting. I was kind of challenged by this or whatever, and I think that's interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a big benefit there. I think honestly, and again, obviously, the amount of people that have been, who have been, gotten ill, become incapacitated, whatever, and people who have passed away, this is obviously not a good thing, right?
Absolutely.
I'm not being very, that's not out of school to say that this has been bad. That's not a hot take. That's just being right. Exactly. But what I am saying is, if there's anything that's good that's coming out of it, at least in the tabletop realm, one of the few things that I can think of, and there's not a lot of them, is that I did have a lot more time to hobby because I wasn't traveling, I wasn't going places. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, it finally gave me the push of like, okay, I'm going to learn how to paint.
Yeah.
I wasn't really painting beforehand. I was thinking about it.
Sure, yeah.
And then suddenly I'm
you
like,
transferred paint from your dropper or your pots to your dropper bottles, and you've done a lot of that stuff.
I'm like, holy cow, I can I set up space and buy. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I think that a lot of people, one of the reasons that the videos that I was doing with the live streams that I was doing for those virtual conventions with the folks from Board Game Geek were well attended was because people are like, well, I'm not going anywhere or doing anything. I have all these board games. They have all these miniatures in them. Maybe I can pick some things up and learn how to do them. And so, life is what you make it. So when you're given that kind of card to play, you got to figure out how to play it, I guess. And that was, at least for me, and I think a bunch of other people, that was one potential benefit, was like, well, I've got nowhere else to go right now, so I guess I have more time to paint, or more time to, I know a lot of people were practicing like games, like if you're into like competitive like Magic play and stuff like that, or whatever, and that's cool. So, although Magic also stepped up and really upped their, from what I understand, they upped their online game quite a bit too. So. A lot of people became content creators, mostly Twitch. Like a lot of people started streaming on Twitch. I mean, I started doing it during the pandemic, still doing it, but not everybody did. But it was one of those things. It was hard to even find cameras and stuff. Oh yeah, all of a sudden,
webcams and
like microphones, cameras, anything that was related to live streaming. All of a sudden, was just like super hard to get.
Yeah,
and that has gotten better in some ways. And has gotten worse in some ways. One of the other things, getting back into the much longer category of bad things, was the overall kind of, like early on, like you were saying, early on in the pandemic, it was difficult to find...
toilet paper.
That's true too. Very good point. But it was also difficult to find, like, streaming stuff, microphones and webcams and all kinds of junk, like all that stuff too.
Yeah.
But in gaming, as long as your place did, your local store or whatever did curbside or something like that, it was not hard.
It wasn't too bad. Some of them were running out of stuff faster because they're like, we weren't expecting us to sell out of this stuff.
Yeah.
So they started speeding up, like, oh, we need to get this stuff.
And there were some places that just didn't survive even the first 6 months.
Yeah, and there were some of those you're like, I don't know how much longer they would have gone otherwise.
Right, they were probably teetering on the edge, and they weren't.
It was a good way to kind of bow out and go.
Nobody was planning for, most people weren't planning for a global pandemic.
No.
There were people that were like, and they,
this is a good time, and I can say this, and nobody's going to go,
right.
You're a bad business owner. You're
exactly.
Just like, another victim of COVID. Yep.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But, the thing is that now, as things are starting to kind of get a bit better, and numbers are going down and everything like that, and this is not part of the bad category. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here. Actually, going back into the slightly good category, I've been talking to store owners who have been talking about in 2021, I've talked to at least 3 store owners who are like, we had our best month ever during 2021. One of our local friends who's a store owner had his best month ever, like in March, I think, of 2021. I talked to another guy at Gen Con who said that he manages at a game store that's been around for years and years and years and years and years. And in, I think he said June, they had their best month ever. And they were so excited. Nice. And so they had a pizza party for the employees and all this stuff. And then July beat June. And then they were like, whoa. And then August beat July.
Nice.
And they were just like, gee, so... and that didn't happen everywhere, but for some places it definitely did, especially like there were some places that got through the early part of 2020 and the rest of 2020 and they were like, this ain't great. And then early part of 2021, people just sort of opened up and were like buying stuff. And that's happening in the tabletop industry. It's also happening in the regular industry. Consumer buying has gone up.
Yes.
And this is where we're starting to run into trouble.
Right.
Because more people want more stuff. However, boats and shipping, and if you've watched any news recently, you're starting to hear it more and more, and it's not going away, folks. It is getting harder and harder to get things shipped, specifically from overseas. And in case you're wondering, most of your board games and stuff are generally, and a lot of the stuff is coming from over there, over in China, to over here, wherever you might be, and it's coming on a ship, and we're starting to see big delays. I talked to people at Gen Con in the industry who were saying that they used to pay $3,000 to $5,000 for a shipping container, and that's usually a 48 to 53 foot shipping container. You get whatever your new game is. They completely fill a shipping container full of your new game, and then it goes on a boat, and then it goes on one of those big boats that's stacked with all kinds of stuff. Hopefully it doesn't go through the Suez Canal and get stuck in it and all that kind of stuff. Like
I forgot about that.
Yeah, exactly. And then you go through all that stuff, and then it eventually ends up at a port, and then people take it off the port and then put it on trucks, and then it goes to distribution, and then eventually it shows up at your store or your mailbox or whatever. All of that system is currently kind of screwed up because the ports are closing a lot on the China side, because as soon as one person shows up with COVID, they close down the port for a couple of days. So that's problematic. So the shipping containers that were costing $3,000 to $5,000 previous, the guy I talked to at Gen Con said he paid $18,000 for a shipping container.
Yeah,
he felt lucky.
They're now, some of them are paying $25,000 to $30,000.
So when you think about how much extra that takes up in the cost of the materials, I mean, the cost of the production of a game, that's going to get passed on to us, the consumers. They're not just going to go, well, we'll just eat that. You know what I mean? Like
Absolutely.
So you're going to see, probably for the next couple of years, not just tabletop games, but also just consumer stuff in general is going to kind of go up. And when I say kind of, I mean a lot, probably.
Yeah, I've got the Dark Tower, Return to the Dark Tower from Restoration Games. And the price that we got, they're like, we don't even think we're making money on this. We think we're losing money on it now. And I'm pretty sure when they shared the MSRP, it was like twice as much.
Oh, yeah.
And I still think that they're trying to like minimize that as much as possible.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that Car Wars that I just got, I got the Double Ace Kickstarter level. And that's a box that you can just buy. They call it Double Ace. It just comes with like kind of twice as amount of stuff or something like that. I believe that I paid about $150 plus shipping for that Kickstarter, and it's not available in retail yet. But they've put up the pre-orders and stuff like that for retail. That Double Ace box is $375 at retail, and that is them trying to recoup because they had to get the stuff. Like they already charged everybody for the shipping, before the pandemic, and then. Now, everything changed, and they can't necessarily come back to us and go, hey, you owe us another $80 for shipping. So they're going to have to push that onto the retail.
This is a definite new dynamic.
Absolutely. So it's not just, like, we're going to see a lot of companies, I think. We're going to see a lot less Kickstarters in the tabletop gaming area. And tabletop gaming is one of the biggest Kickstarter categories.
Yeah.
So, that's going to be a thing. We're going to definitely see less of it. And we're probably, I'm hoping, frankly, we're going to see more companies trying to find ways to get things produced in the country in which they live.
Yeah, that's that or print and play that we kind of talked about, like, or as far as like 3D printed stuff, digital delivery, that kind of stuff is going to go up. I can see. Yeah, because like one of the Kickstarters I was on, it was like their second Kickstarter, but the first one was supposed to, by the time they had this all ready to go, the first one was already supposed to be delivered, and it hadn't, and they were like, okay, so...
They're like, we can't do a second Kickstarter when we haven't been able to deliver the first.
But they're like, well, let's do it, but then we'll let people join later, if they wanted to wait to see that they make sure they like the first one before they did the second one. And they're like, oh, yeah, we'll do that, like, we'll slide it like 30 days or something. And that was like... That feels like 6 months ago. Like that.
Well, yeah.
It was, I think, February, and now, it's November now, and I still have not got my stuff.
I got a friend who works in the industry. They do a lot of sourcing of materials and things like that, and they have catalogs, and there's all kinds of stuff, and it's a lot of products, hard products. And she was saying that they look every day, like at Port of LA and different places like that, and she's like, you look at the port of LA and there's like between 60 and 70 container ships just sitting out there, and some of them have been sitting out there for a month and they're just waiting, and your stuff is on one of those ships because each of those ships can carry 2,500 to 3,000 containers. You know what I mean? Like,
right. That's just the size of those things are just.
Oh yeah. But it's a situation where those things used to show up. They would like get to destination, go right into a slot, get unloaded, and get out of there in 12 hours or 24 hours or something like that. And now they get there and they're just sitting. You know?
Well, and they're even finding that sometimes they'll get them unloaded and they're just sitting there because they don't have enough trucks to carry them.
Right.
out.
Yeah, they don't have the trucks. They don't have the people to load them on the truck. I mean, it's a whole kind of it's what they call a perfect storm, I think is what it is. Yeah. And like I said, it's not just in the tabletop industry, but it's definitely hitting the tabletop industry. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's one of the reasons. Yeah, you're right. Exactly. That's one of the reasons why we talked about print and play last week, because that's for the most part an industry that's generally it's all bits and stuff, and so yeah, we're not going to run out. But yeah, I mean, it's going to affect Kickstarters. It's going to affect a lot of things. Hopefully, we'll start to see some companies that start to try to figure out ways to source out of their own country, not just because it's going to make things faster, but also it's not a great idea to have your stuff shipped all over the planet just because it's slightly cheaper. You know what I mean?
Right.
At least in my opinion.
Yeah,
like
right.
Ecologically. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is it ecological? No, it's ecologically, is it?
I don't know. Potato?
Yeah, probably. Potatoes.
Potatoes.
Nice. Yeah, so I don't know. It's one of those things that I'm hoping, obviously we all hope that these things get fixed sooner than later, but it's going to be a little bit of a while. So
I think we're going to get replicators, like on Star Trek.
That would be pretty cool.
I mean, they're getting there.
3D printers are basically replicators. They're just, you can't. Well, I was going to say you can't eat them, but I know
there's food ones, yeah.
I know there's food 3D printers.
Yeah,
I mean I don't have one. That'd be probably dumb.
It's getting there.
Yeah, I don't think it would be very tasty. But, still. Mm-hmm. I mean, if it was just sugar, I guess that's something. But yeah, no, it's one of those things where we know the industry is full of smart people.
Yep.
And so they're going to, for the most part, try to figure out how to hopefully fix some of these things in the ways that they can. And we're going to see things change, even though we are now starting to go back into stores a little bit more, having events, having conventions, with caution and this and that. Now the issue is going to be conventions will probably be real big because of people coming together and playing games that they already own.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because that at least will be something they can do. If they're looking at the new stuff, that's going to be harder to find. So, yeah, that's.
Yeah, I mean, you have a year of games you haven't played with anybody that you didn't get to play with.
Yeah, like I don't really need any new miniatures. I got a basement full. It's not like I'm going to be like, God, I got nothing to paint. Like that's not going to ever happen, ever. Before the sun or Earth falls into the sun, I don't think it's going to happen. I could be wrong, but yeah. So that's kind of I think this episode was obviously to some degree. I think it might have been a little bit of news to some folks. Obviously, we've all been through this. Nobody's like, what? Panda who? And, people know what's been going on with this COVID thing.
Yeah.
But I think that some folks maybe don't see all the different ways that it's kind of touched the tabletop gaming, space, and the ways that it's going to continue to do that for a while, and the ways we need to think about that. We need to be... we need to be patient with game companies. If you like the game company a lot and you're like, but you're just not shipping that thing fast. Yeah, there's reasons why.
Right, they're not going,
they're not,
you know what?
Yeah, they're not just like, I'm not really interested today.
I don't think Pete really wants the game.
No,
they're going to make him wait for it.
They're working real hard and going uphill. So it's a situation where we think, I think at least it's a really good idea for us to kind of keep this all in perspective. Yeah, we are talking about games, by the way, not food or clothing.
Right, pre-plan your games. You're gonna have to think about them a little bit further out than you used to, and it's just gonna be what it is.
Yeah, gonna be what it is for a while. Yeah, so a little bit of a bummer of an episode, a little bit. But, sometimes we got to bring the news.
Now you're all super happy. You're like,
no. But still, I think it's important, like I said, to know this stuff. So I hope that we can all at least get together and play again in person soonish. I'm planning on, I've talked with my contacts at the university and my tabletop gaming convention, the Tabletop Minions Expo. Looks like it's scheduled for early June 2022.
Oh, the breaking news. I didn't even know about that.
Oh, I thought I told you about that.
No.
Yeah, it's like the 4th and 5th. Like, that's been penciled in.
Last I knew, you were like, they haven't gotten back to me yet.
No, they did. They did. And they're opening stuff back up again, so that's good, too. So, looking forward to that. Early June 2022. Yeah, so, though we may have to play games that we've had for a little while, we'll hopefully be able to get together and start playing again more soon.
Right.
Absolutely.
And if you're trying to ship yourself there, you need to start now.
Yeah, I would drive. I wouldn't ship. Yeah. I mean, unless you live on a different, I was going to say planet for a half a second, but I didn't. I mean, if you live on a different continent, that's going to be a tough drive.
Do you have people from other planets coming to your expo?
Not yet.
That's amazing.
That we know of. Thanks again for listening to this episode of the GameFor Podcast. If you've got questions or comments and you're watching on YouTube, please leave a comment below. If you're listening via your favorite podcast player or just aren't into the whole YouTube comments section thing, then you can feel free to reach out to us via email at podcast@iamgamefor.com. You can also keep up to date with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And check out our website at www.iamgamefor.com. That is www.iamgamefor.com. Thanks.